Hello, it's Mark from Enchantment of Eternity here. I just got back from seeing the newest Star Wars film, Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi. I saw that the midnight showing that they had here in New Zealand. So if, some people were wondering, well, how come you get to see the new Star Wars movie early? I didn't get to see it early. I saw it at the same time as everyone else in New Zealand. Well, everyone who went to the midnight showing, that is. And so now I'm just going to give some real quick thoughts. It's like 3 a.m. over here at the time, so I'm a bit tired, and so I'm not going to be here too long. Probably get some sleep. So I'm just going to come in. And yeah, I saw it. It was, as I said, it was released just a couple days early in New Zealand, time difference and all, and stuff like that. And for some reason, we release our movies on Thursday, and it's actually technically Thursday here for, I don't know, whatever. But I saw it in midnight showing. First thing I'll say is that, this video is going to be spoiler free, first of all, unless you're like really if you're super hypersensitive, then you shouldn't be watching any videos about Star Wars, because I don't get these people who are so hypersensitive to spoilers, because what do you expect? I mean, I don't know, but I'm not going to give away any specifics of the film, because I will assume those watching this video I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if I'll ever get around to doing a spoilers video on it. Like for Rogue One, I said I would, but I never did. I've got a lot on my plate right now. I don't know. Maybe I'll get to it eventually. So just initial thoughts. First, I want to say the one thing I'm really disappointed in has nothing to do with the movie itself, but the fact that the screening I went to, because for Force Awakens and Rogue One, I went to the Embassy Theater in Wellington, which is like the high class sort of classic movie theater in Wellington, where they screened the world premiere of Lord of the Rings Return of the King was screened in this theater. And that's where I went to see Force Awakens and Rogue One, and they had like a huge party. They had like a band playing Star Wars music, people in cosplay. It was a blast, almost as much as fun as the movie. And of course, in the theater, everyone was excited and cheering and stuff. But this time I was a bit lazy. I was too late. I didn't realize tickets had gone on sale. And so the tickets were sold out before I even realized they'd gone on sale. So I wasn't able to see it at this theater. Instead, I had to see it at the normal sort of corporate, regular movie theater. There was no cosplay, no celebrations. It was just a boring normal movie audience. So that has nothing to do with the movie, but that's the one thing I was disappointed most in the theater. So next year for the Han Solo movie, I'll have to make sure. And it's disappointing because this is by far the best out of the three, Force Awakens, Rogue One. This is by far. In fact, I hate saying stuff like this like immediately after I see the film, because it's all hyperbole and I'm sort of on a high, and I usually need to let something sit for a while. But my first initial thoughts is this is probably my second favorite Star Wars film after Empire Strikes Back. Although I do want to manage expectations. I don't think it's a perfect film, but it's probably, I have a lower opinion of a lot of other Star Wars films than most people do. Like the first one, New Hope, I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a bit too melodramatic. Return of the Jedi has its issues. Like I was watching the honest trailer for it today, and boy, were they rough on it. I don't think it's as bad as they're making it out to be, but after watching it, I was like, you got some points there. It does have some mighty flaws. I still love it, but I do see it as it's not perfect. So maybe that's why I'm saying. So bear that in mind when I say I think this is the second best, is that the only Star Wars movie I really hold to that high of a pedestal as most people do is Empire. And I'll have to let this one sit with me. But it was an adventure. It was a lot. It was a really good action adventure movie, and because mainly like there was a lot of character moments in this. I think that was Rian Johnson's flavor coming through. In fact, I even suspect, like I haven't heard this opinion yet, but I suspect some people are gonna think it's too slow and too much dialogue and too much character moments, but that's the stuff that I love. Although I will say some of the bits with Luke and Rey on the island, they did drag it maybe a bit too much longer than it needed to, but they were still good. Still enjoyed them. Still liked it overall. Pump for the movie, says Buzz Talks. How you doing, Max? Oh yeah, definitely. Get pumped. Although, do try to manage your expectations, because when I saw, like, I did a couple of, I watched some spoiler-free reviews before I saw the movie, and they weren't giving away any specifics, and I won't hear, like I said. But they were saying stuff like, "Wow, there's some major revelations that blew your mind," and if you've seen videos like that, try to manage your expectations. Don't believe them. Like, there were a couple revelations in the movie which were interesting, good for the movie, but nothing mind-blowing. There was nothing like all these like fan speculations and all that and whatever, just flying all over the place, and they're like flights of fantasy and nothing Shyamalan, nothing like huge. Oh my God, this was this the whole time, like. I mean, there's some interesting revelations, but nothing like they worked for the story and worked for the characters, but nothing that's gonna like, oh my, like Luke, finding out in Empire Strikes Back that Darth Vader was Luke's father. Like, that was mind blowing. That was holy shit. There's nothing like that here. So, based off of some of these reviews, I expected. And that was probably the thing that disappointed me the most, and that was just the reason these reviews' fault for for ramping up. Like, oh my God, oh my God, huge, mind blowing. No, manage your expectations, and if you don't expect it, then you're going to enjoy it a lot more, because, as I said, these are interesting revelations that are good for the story and help the overall story, which I think was pretty awesome. Yes, and Buzz Talk says, I hear it's a very different Star Wars film. I don't know. See, that's another thing I'm not too sure I agree with the critics about. I would say it's a unique Star Wars film, and that's why I love it so much. It's original, but it does follow the same sort of basic format that most Star Wars films do in terms of action adventure. Like, you have a couple different storylines, thinking Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, even some of the prequels. You have like adventure, like a couple different storylines, and they're on this adventure, they're that adventure, and they sort of roll together and into a really good ending. In that terms, I think it's like a Star Wars film. And I think that even the critics are saying that it does definitely have that Star Wars feel to it. And I think that's probably what they're talking about. But I don't know, like, I wouldn't say it's like totally different. Like, some people, like, I heard some other critics saying stuff like, I don't know about this direction they went in. I don't really see it as that, like, I don't know. I just see it as an original, unique film, which is what I fucking want. It's what I want to see, and that's what I got. So if anyone, like, who watched my review of The Force Awakens, like, I actually just watched my own review of Force Awakens earlier today, because I had forgotten. I had watched the movie a couple months ago, but I had forgotten, like, in my review, I talked, like, at the start of the review, I laid out the plot of The Force Awakens, but in a way where it was also the plot of A New Hope. So it applied to both films. And I was just so amazed. I even forgot how heavily The Force Awakens borrowed from A New Hope. Like, I was watching some other critic reviews of Last Jedi, and they talk about, some people say Force Awakens borrowed too much for A New Hope, but I disagree. Well, they're wrong, because not just my review, but watch Red Letter Media. They're more brutal than I am. But Force Awakens, and that's why I even went as far as to say, like, I preferred Rogue One over Force Awakens, because at least, say what you want about Rogue One, at least it was original. At least it had an original story with original characters. Force Awakens borrowed way too heavily from A New Hope, and that's not to say like there wasn't original and all, that it was a carbon copy. It wasn't a carbon copy. The original characters like Rey and Finn and all that and stuff were slightly different and slightly rearranged, but the basic like plot and even like specifics like setting, like the desert and droid going with the information, all that. What I'm getting at is The Last Jedi is not like that, because that was probably my biggest worry after seeing Force Awakens, because everyone was saying, well, don't worry, like they did this with The Force Awakens. They tied it too much into A New Hope because they just had to draw people in. When they get to Episode VIII, that's when they'll spring in something original. I'm like, that's a lot of assumptions there. That's really assuming, and you know what they say about people who assume. So that's what I kept saying, and I kind of like the morbid me, like sort of right after Force Awakens, like, oh, I bet you Episode VIII is just going to be a carbon copy of Empire Strikes Back, and they kind of set it up that way. With, you know, Rey on that planet with Luke. It's like, oh, she's just going to train, it's going to be like Yoda and blah, blah, blah. I will tell you that my fears were alleviated. It is not a carbon copy of Empire Strikes Back, and I think that's what the other critics are saying is unique. There are certain elements from Empire and Jedi, actually, Return of the Jedi, in this movie, but not nowhere near to the level as it was in Force Awakens. In fact, I would say it's at the level that it should be, just enough to where there's a slight sense to tie it into the Star Wars continuity and make it feel like a Star Wars film, but without making it feel like it's trying too hard to be like that other film. Like, I'm sorry, Force Awakens felt like it was trying way too hard to be like A New Hope, even though there's original elements, there's Poe, there's Finn, there's no one like that in the original trilogy, but still, basic plot was trying too hard to be like A New Hope. That is not the case. Definitively not the case with The Last Jedi. And that's why I loved it so much. Main part, it felt original. It felt like a Star Wars film, but like a film like a Star Wars film I have not seen before. And that's exactly what I want. And I would say it's better than Rogue One, because Rogue One did have its issues. You didn't really get to connect with any of the characters, especially the main characters. They kind of felt like sort of cliches, and there was more of like just people doing things. Whereas here, I mean, it helped having Force Awakens. Again, the original elements of Force Awakens was this character, and those elements carried over to The Last Jedi, and they used them to really grow. Like, you really got a strong sense of the characters. And that's probably my favorite. That's why I love, because I don't know, if you've been with my channel, you know, one of the main aspects I love about movies, TV, anything, is character stories. And I think they did such an amazing job with the character stories of all the characters involved. Like, some people, critics were bitching, like, well, some of the characters didn't come through. It's a movie. It's a 2.5-hour movie. There's like 8-10 characters. There's only so much you can do. I would say the characters came through enough. Like, the main characters really came through, and the supporting characters came through as much as they need to. This is my same complaint about the X-Men films, where like, oh, these characters didn't do much. It's like, it's only a 2.5-hour film. What do you want from them? And I think they did an amazing job, because you have to balance into a 2.5-hour film. You have to balance, especially with a huge ensemble cast like they have here. You have to balance who's important and who's not. And the ones that are only peripheral, they come through enough. And that's fine. I was one of the people who didn't complain about Captain Phasma and Force Awakens. Everyone else complained. And the only reason I think they complained is because she was being built up like this really awesome person. But if you go into that film completely like ignorant and just thinking, oh, this is just another crony, then it comes off as a typical crony. There's nothing wrong. And and people who want to see more of her in this film, manage your expectations. That's all I'll say. Anyway, yes, absolutely. What else I have to say? So I watched some critical reviews where they were saying that a lot of the critics are saying they didn't really like Finn's storyline. They thought some people were really harsh on it, actually. And they said they thought that the movie came to a halt with Finn's storyline in the middle. I don't agree. I think they're being way too harsh. I will say it was probably the weakest storyline in the film, but the weakest. It's like the least. Maybe weakest isn't the right word. The least awesome, I would say. So if you have a whole bunch of awesome storylines, and this one was the least awesome out of all the awesome storylines, so I'm not complaining. Like, I was fine with it. I didn't have any issues with the Finn storyline. It wasn't as great as the others, and I guess I can see why people didn't want to spend as much time on it, but I had no issue with it. In fact, I would even say like some of the Luke and Rey stuff on the planet could have been trimmed a little bit. Like the Finn stuff was fine to me. But again, overall, I like the Luke and Rey stuff though, because great character stories. And then I guess I'll touch on, like, I don't know if you've been watching this stuff on the internet and stuff, because they were building up like the Porgs. I don't know if you heard of them. If you saw the trailer from for Last Jedi, you would have seen this thing where Chewbacca was on there going, roar, and then they have this little creature right next to him going, yeah! That's a Porg. And like, I was watching Screen Junkies and some other channels where they hype the fuck out of these things. They're like, Porg, Porg, Porg this, Porg that. And I wish I didn't have that exposure, because I went in thinking it's like kind of like they did sort of the similar thing with the Ewoks, because I remember I was like, 4 years old or something when Return of the Jedi came out, but even I remember like knowing what the Ewoks were before I even saw Return of the Jedi. And I guess it's mostly through toys and stuff, but now it's like internet, so different mediums. But they had the same way to sort of hype things up and get these things out there. And I didn't have an issue with the Porgs. Like, I was worried, like the way they were talking about them. I was, they were worried it would be another Jar Jar. I didn't think it would go that far. I was more worried about there being another Ewoks. Which, again, I'm not a fan of the Ewoks. I'm sorry. I liked them as a kid, but that's because I was a kid. I don't think they helped. And the Porgs, like, they're fine. I heard even some critics complaining, well, they're a bit too childish or whatever. They're barely in the movie, for Christ's sake, and they're not like interfering with the tone of the movie like the Ewoks were, or like Jar. Nowhere near the level of Jar Jar. Come on, let's be real here. And not even the Ewoks level, I would say. I would say they're better than the Ewoks, and they're not even worth talking about. They're not worth making such a big deal out. In fact, they weren't the only cute little creatures. If you've seen the trailer, there's just like these crystal snow dog thingies. And I would say they were in it, well, maybe not just as much as the Porgs, but almost as much as the Porgs. And they were like sort of cute little cuddly things, and no one was making a big deal out of them. So I actually thought they were fine. They were like, they had the cute comedy moments that actually worked. It didn't interfere with the storyline like the freaking Ewoks did, nowhere near like freaking Jar Jar did. So I thought they were great. I had no issues with it whatsoever. Marilyn Bentley, haven't seen you in the wild. Just pop in and say hello. Yes, it has been a while, Marilyn. Yeah. Anyway, so what else was I going to talk about? I have a feeling I was going to talk about something specific, but I can't remember now. This is what happens when I just do these live videos at 3 in the morning. Trying to think of something that's not going to be spoilery. I love the structure of the film. I think maybe the Luke Leia stuff dragged on a little bit, but other than that, there's never a part in this movie I was bored, and there's never a part I felt, oh, this is contrived, or this is just being just like A New Hope and whatever. And it was really exciting. I think maybe it wasn't quite as complex of a story as I was hoping it would be. There were a few things I was hoping to get more of, and I think that just has to do with the fact I let these reviews influence my expectations. I should manage my expectations better. Because as a film in itself, like, I don't think it's the best thing ever. Like, so I'm not saying it's better than Empire Strikes Back. Like, not going that far. So, but it's definitely, like, some critics are like, oh, I don't know if it's better than Force Awakens. It is way better than Force Awakens. But then again, a lot of critics seem to like Force Awakens a lot better than I did. Like, I didn't hate it. I gave it an 8 out of 10, which is a decent rating. But I think Again, it was just way too much like the freaking New Hope. I like watched my review again. It's unbelievable how similar those films are, and it's nothing like Last Jedi is nothing like that. Last Jedi is like an original film. It had a very satisfying ending, very intense. Yeah. Was the opening crawl text interesting? It's an opening crawl text. What do you want? It's just as interesting as any opening crawl text of any Star Wars film. Okay, so I did remember the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll, no spoilers. I'll just be vague here. But the one thing that did kind of bother me most about this film, and it's probably is more of a hey, Colonel Doomsday, how's it going, man? But it's probably more of a criticism of this new trilogy as a whole, rather than just Last Jedi, is that the whole, and you kind of got this sense in The Force Awakens, but I think it's solidified here in this movie, is that the whole setting of this new story for the entire trilogy, not just this movie, but the entire trilogy, is kind of contrived, and it's kind of just recreating the same exact circumstances in the original Star Wars trilogy, where you have the Empire and you have the Rebellion. And you probably know this already because you have this in The Force Awakens with the Starkiller base, and thank God there was no Starkiller base in that. I will say, give you that spoiler. Whew, so there's no bullshit, no freaking another Death Star. God damn it. We had enough of the fucking Death Star, so there was none of that, so that's great. But anyway, but the whole like feeling of like the original trilogy is the Empire and the Rebellion, and this movie kind of solidified that even more, that they're just copying the original trilogy, and the circumstances for doing so is not really explained very well. So it's almost like, so it made me think, like, what is the point of like their victory in the original trilogy? Like, they defeated the Emperor, they defeated the Empire, but it seemed like, well, 20 or 30 years later, the same exact thing happens all over again. So it's kind of like, what's the point? And again, like, they don't really get into, that's the one issue I have with this trilogy as a whole, is that they don't really get into the politics behind it, or the explanations, or any of this stuff. And I think, I said this about The Force Awakens, I think this is an overreaction to the prequels, because the prequels got into too much of the, Trade Federation meetings and talking about this, and people hated that. I was like, what the fuck is this? I go to Star Wars to see fighting. What the hell? They're sitting at a table having freaking trade negotiations. What the hell? And I agree, the prequels was over the top, definitely, but like, there's a happy medium, and I think these new Star Wars movies they're overreacting to that prequel thing, and so they're shying too much away from the politics behind it. I talked about this in The Force Awakens, and I think it's just as applicable in this movie as well, as that I wish I had a better feel, because the way the political situation is presented is like, this is the original trilogy all over again, and that's it, which I think is a bit silly. I wish there was more to it than that. But, I mean, that's more of a complaint about the overall new trilogy as a whole, and I think that it is an overreaction to the prequels. But for the movie itself, I think it was amazing. Actually, I think it was. I wouldn't say it was one of the best movies ever. I'm not going to be that hyperbolic, but I will say it is one of the best sci-fi action adventure movies I've seen in a while. It's very enthralling. Very, like, the structure of it was very good. Like, it was, as I said, I was never really bored. Kept me interested all the way through, and it's just, yeah. I'm repeating myself now, so I think I might head out too. I think that's pretty much said what I need to say about this. What's in the chat going on at the moment? Okay, so General Benabal, I don't probably pronounce that wrong, says, what did you think about Kylo Ren's character in the film? I love Kylo Ren. At first, you have to understand, like, I love Kylo Ren in Force Awakens as well. He was one of my favorite parts of The Force Awakens. And so I equally loved him in this film. I loved him more, actually, because they explored his character more in this film. And I love what they did with him in this film. And I watched my review for Force Awakens. I even said that he's one of the best villains of all time. And watching this new film, I stand by that statement. I think he's really dynamic, interesting. Like a lot of people complain, oh, he's just an emo kid. I will say he does come off a bit less. Like he still does a bit, but he comes off a bit less as an emo kid in this film as he did in the first one. But I don't see it as him being emo. I see it as him being dynamic and interesting, and not just I'm this evil, unstoppable bad guy, because that's a bit boring. You want more of a human character in your villain, someone who you can actually identify with and see their point of view, even though they're an evil motherfucker. Those are always the better villains, and that's what I think. That's what I think of Kylo Ren, and yeah, I think that's even more true now. Bhavik Shankar ask a question which I'm not going to answer because that's a spoiler question. This says, do we know who Snoke is? I'm not going to answer that. Go see the movie. Go to bed before 4 a.m., Mark, okay? Well, okay. You're not the boss of me, Cardinal Doomsday. No, I probably will anyway. So how many Star Wars movies are there going to be anyway? Okay, well, infinite amount. Well, all right. So there's going to be the 9 in the quadruple trilogy like this. So you have the episodes 1 through 3, episodes 4 through 6, and then there'll be episodes 7 through 9. Some people are speculating, oh, is it going to be episode 10? I don't think they will. I think they're just going to end it there. But it's going to be the Skywalker story. The Skywalker story is going to end there. So all the things relevant to the original trilogy and to the prequels will end with this new trilogy. But we're going to get another trilogy. It's been announced Rian Johnson's going to do another trilogy. It's going to have nothing to do with this, quad trilogy or however you call it. Nothing to do with the Skywalker story. So basically, episode 9 will be the end to this specific episode blah blah blah. But the other Star Wars, they're just going to splinter off into other storylines, other trilogies that's going to have nothing to do with this, or very little, I should say. And then there's going to be the anthology movies like Rogue One. So Disney is already committed to releasing one Star Wars movie a year for indefinitely. So in the unforeseeable future, you're going to get a new Star Wars movie every year. So how many Star Wars movies are going to be? To infinity and beyond. And some people are very unhappy about this because they're like, it's one of the great things about Star Wars is that it was finite, there was few of them, and now they were just going to be bombarded with tons and tons of Star Wars. I don't see that as a bad thing because when bombarded with tons and tons of Star Trek, I talked about how there's thousands of hours, I mean not thousands, but hundreds of hours of Star Trek. Maybe it is thousands, but yeah, I think it was 6. If you watch every single episode and movie of Star Trek, it would take you straight without sleep. It would take you 6 days. So there's tons of Star Trek, and I love Star Trek. And in fact, that's part of what I loved about it is because there's so much, mythology to pull from, and it will be the same with Star Wars. So I don't have an issue with that. I think that's fine. Let's see if we have any other questions. Colonel Doomsday says, oh fuck, I was afraid of another trilogy. Yeah, but it's going to be a different kind of story though. Colonel Doomsday says yes, but Star Trek is over decades, so is Star Wars. Star Wars started in 1977. Star Trek started in 1969, so only fuck math too early. 8 years, only 8 years earlier. No, Star Trek started in 66. Okay, 11 years. Sorry, it ended in 69, so it started in 66. 11 years older than Star Wars, so it's not much older. And plus, you could say Star Wars was dormant for a while, so was Star Trek. But anyway, see what else is going on in the chat. Um, yeah, I watched the movie. I live in New Zealand. It was released here. I already talked about that. Um, Upful Soul says no spoilers. Is it a full price film? I wasted my money watching Thor after all the hype. Well, are you talking about Thor Ragnarok? Because I gotta say, I haven't talked about this on my channel yet, but Thor Ragnarok is my favorite Marvel movie of all time. It is one of my favorite movies of the year, one of my all-time favorite comic book movies. So you just say you wasted your money. I can't advise you then because you obviously have an extremely different opinion on films than I do because Thor Ragnarok was awesome. It was the single best Marvel movie I've ever seen. But anyway, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. I can't advise you then. I would say that Last Jedi was definitely a full price, most certainly. Like you get more than your money's worth for this. It is a full movie. But then again, I would say the same thing about Thor Ragnarok. So there you go. General says people seem to be really praising Mark Hamill's performance as Luke's. Thoughts? Yeah, it was good. I don't know if I'd go as far as some of these other people are going. Like, it was the best thing ever. I think it was good. It wasn't bad. It wasn't average. It was good, but I don't know if I would say it was the best thing ever. I mean, it was good. He's a good actor. He did a good job. I love the way he portrayed him. I think it's really interesting that the what was so interesting? That Mark Hamill apparently at one point he said he disagreed with every single direction he was given on Luke, but he did it because he's an actor and he'll do what he. That's fun. He kind of talked that back a bit and isn't as critical. He's like, "Oh, okay, I can see where they're going with it now," but he was saying that he was just a bit. I wouldn't say upset, but maybe disappointed that they shut George Lucas out and wasn't taking any of his advice. I can see that perspective. I know a lot of people love to hate on George Lucas because of the prequels, but the prequels, to me, that's what happens when you give him complete and total power. I think because other people pointed out that Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie he was involved in the least, but he still still created the bare bones story for it. He still was involved. So I can see that maybe could have maybe Disney didn't need to go as far as to lock him out entirely. They could have had him involved. But don't give him the free reign. That's what you learn from the prequels. As long as he doesn't have free reign, then I think he can still do good stuff. Which time was the screening? It was the midnight screening. Let's see. Marilyn Bentley says, I think I said this before, but I never watched Star Trek. Well, Marilyn, I don't know if you check out my channel, but I did this video where there's there's a link to a list I did on IMDb of 100 episodes to watch of Star Trek, or 300 if you're so inclined, that will give you the best episodes, fan favorites, not just my opinion, and the bare bones to understand what Star Trek is. I would highly recommend checking that out and just to sort of dip your toe and see if you like Star Trek. Give it a shot. Because if you just go in watching random episodes, random movies, you're likely to get a lot of filler and stupid shit that's going to waste your time. So this list will cut through that and give you the good stuff to watch. Anyway, yes, I'm self-promoting my own stuff. Well, let's see. Do you think Disney has made Star Wars better, or were the older Star Wars better? Or if you're talking about I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I think I need to see Episode 9 before I make that determination. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not inclined to say either is better. I'm inclined to say they're different. I kind of think the original trilogy had this magic that the newer movies are just trying to recapture. So in that sense, I guess that puts the original trilogy above anything new they could do. But on the other hand, like I said, I thought this Last Jedi movie was better than A New Hope and The Return of the Jedi, because both those movies had their issues. So, without details, how would you rate the lightsaber duels or duels in this movie? Very highly, extremely highly. Some of the best, and now I wouldn't say the best. Now, don't misquote me here. I'm not saying they're the best in all the Star Wars movies, but some of the best. So they're right up there with your favorites, or my favorites anyway. So yeah, they're good. They're good. What else have we got here? Was midway watching through your review of Code Jenner when I saw you. Oh, wow, that's let me know what you think of that review. What else have we got here? Any other questions for me before I take off? I think that's about it. I might have missed something earlier up here. No, I think that's it. All right. Cool. Well, I'm going to take off then. I think I stayed a bit longer than I intended. We'll see. I might do a full spoilers review, but if I do, it won't even be for a couple of months, and people won't be interested in this movie anymore. Because as I said, I have a lot of my plate at the moment. But yes. Oh, Colonel Doomsday says, when you going to do the Mr. Robot live stream? Well, that hasn't, I shouldn't say because it hasn't been. Well, it's kind of semi-be confirmed. I just need to double check because we've been having our schedule things crossed. But we'll say it probably will be Saturday, or for you and I, it will be Sunday, and Australia and New Zealand. But for those in the US, it'll be Saturday. So hopefully don't quote me on that, but that's the current plan. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take off now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for checking out my channel and all of that good stuff. And yeah, just be sure to check out my channel for all the other Star Trek and stuff I do. And if I get around to doing a full-on review for Last Jedi, since it is my favorite Star Wars movies of the newer ones, maybe I should do one, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Check you next time.